Last Thursday, the Montreal Canadiens went into Buffalo and got taught a lesson in humility. Dominated at every level of the game. The Canadiens had no answer for the Buffalo Sabres defense or offense, especially Tage Thompson. Does anything change tomorrow night? Let's top some puck. Hey gang, Costa here from PuckTalk Montreal, welcoming you to this January 21st edition of the program. And before we get started, happy birthday to my lovely wife, Carol. She is the reason I have two beautiful girls and the reason why life is as good as it is. Happy birthday, my love. Now that we got all that mushy stuff out of the way, let's talk a little bit before we get into the preview of the next game about Kirby Dach's return. A lot of people just kind of let it go by the wayside, including me, because really, he didn't look out of place. He was creating offense. He was getting in front of the net, creating screens, blocked a couple of shots in his own zone. And overall, despite the fact that he didn't get on the score sheet, he was in plays. You could see him out there doing things, creating for his line mates. It's the guy I wanted Texier to be, except Dach hasn't scored any points. Texier has. Now Texier is injured. We're waiting to see when he returns. But at the end of the day, Kirby Dach could very well be the answer for the first line that the Canadiens have been looking for. We'll see whether or not that actually sticks. But then again, who knows? Trade deadline looming. One before the Olympic break, one after, which is the official one. So we know that there's a lot of talks going on. There's a ton of rumors. None of them really substantiated. Everybody throwing stuff at the wall. We'll see what happens because I don't delve into those rumors unless I know there's some kind of validity to them. But it makes for interesting talk. Not that I want to go in that direction. But anyhow, let's take a look at tomorrow's matchup. Now, we all know that Tage Thompson stole the show last Thursday with a 5-point night, leading the Sabres to a 5-3 win over the Canadiens. The Canadiens, for their part, didn't have an answer to any of the physicality that the Sabres brought to the table. So is there going to be a difference in this hockey game? Well, let's start by looking at our game day lineups and seeing whether or not there are any changes there that might actually influence that decision. So taking a look at the Sabres, it looks pretty much the same to me. You've got Benson, Thompson, and Tuck, Zucker, McLeod, and Quinn, Hellenius, Ostland, and Doan, Greenway, Krebs, and Malenstein. On defense, Samuelson and Dahlin, Byram and Power, Bryson and Metza, and in goal, it's either going to be Ellis or Lyon. Not quite sure. I believe we're going to see Lyon, but given how Ellis played, I also wouldn't be surprised if Lindy Rupp go back to him again because he played very well versus the Canadiens. Then you've got the Habs lineup, looking like it did just this past weekend. This Tuesday. Caulfield, Suzuki, Dach, Slavkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidov, Anderson, Danault, Gallagher, Veleno, Evans, and Bolduc. On defense, Matheson and Dobson, Hudson and Carrier, Gouli, and here it says Struble. I don't think it's going to be Struble. I'm hoping that they put Dach back into the lineup because they can use his physicality against a team like the Sabres. In goal, most likely going to be Sam Montembeault. Then when you take a look at the injuries for these teams, for the Sabres, there's a lot of people missing from their lineup. Josh Norris is a big part of that. You've got Dunn, Kulich, Danforth, and Timmins, along with Norris, all on IR. And scratched Luukkonen, Kesselring, and Kozak. For the Canadiens, Blaise a healthy scratch, along with Dach last game. But like I said, I hope he's in there this time around. And Texier. And on IR, Newhook, Laine, and Larocque. Now, of course, Laine, slowly but surely, finding his way, probably going to be back into the lineup by, they're saying, end of February. I'm going to say maybe mid-February because he seems to be a little bit ahead of schedule. That being said, I mean, the Canadiens have a lot of good problems going on as far as players being available to them. The problem now is keeping 23 guys on the roster and not overdoing it as far as the salary cap is concerned because we know that the Canadiens are right up against it. So we'll see what Kent Hughes does because we know he's a magician. We know he thinks a little differently. So we'll see how he's going to manage this whole situation at the end of the day. No Kadri, no Coleman, Let's just see what he does before we start stepping at the rumors that, sit at the bottom of our shoes and we can't get off. Now, a little bit different 5-point play today. Usually the 5-point play is strengths and weaknesses of the opposing team. 5 guys to stop, 5 guys to watch on the Canadiens, and then the keys to victory. I kind of tried to change it around a little bit because we played them just last week, and we went over those keys to victory. Obviously, the Canadiens didn't do them, but this time around, what we're looking at is a little bit different structure. First, we're going to look at the strengths the Sabres used to beat the Canadiens last Thursday. They relied heavily on their star power, and it took over. The Buffalo Sabres' top-end talent, starting with Tage Thompson, he was the difference maker, exploiting coverage breakdowns, finding soft ice in the slot, and finishing chances at an elite rate. 5 points in one night, nothing to scoff at. That's not to say that the other players on the Sabres didn't contribute as well, like Alex Tuch, for example. But at the end of the day, when the game tightened, Buffalo's play elevated. And Montreal didn't have the same separation that Buffalo did. So that's why they ended up on the wrong side of the winning ledger. Buffalo also had a lot of speed through the neutral zone. Normally, speed through the middle of the ice is the Canadiens' thing. But no, Buffalo managed to keep the Canadiens to the outside and took over the middle of the ice. They were consistently attacking with pace. Their quick north-south transition caught Montreal off guard more times than you can imagine, especially in the second period because of the long line change. It forced defensemen to back off, creating controlled zone entries instead of dump-ins for the Sabres, and that speed stretched the Canadiens' defense so far that they had no answer in their own zone. That structure opened up and allowed entry into the zone ad nauseum, and it created a lot of issues for the Canadiens in Thursday night's game. They had absolutely, I'd call it ruthless, high danger finishing. A lot of their goals came from the high danger areas and on quality looks. They didn't have a massive shot advantage, but what they did have was a lot of high quality shots. Net front presence, a big part as well, quick releases, and second chances turned breakdowns into goals. And that's something that Buffalo does extremely well, given the size of the players on their roster. Something that Buffalo showed in the last hockey game that I wasn't really expecting was a little bit more patience in the offensive zone than they normally show. Rather than forcing low percentage shots, the Sabres cycled effectively and waited for covers to collapse. They tired the Canadiens out. This pulled Montreal low and opened up seams and created opportunities in the slot for the Sabres to get high danger opportunities and also a lot of backdoor looks. Buffalo controlled the tempo throughout the game and protected their lead by continuing to push the pace, something the Canadiens just aren't used to. How often have we seen them come back in the third period when the opposing team slows the pace down and tries to maintain control of the hockey game? That's not what happened versus Buffalo. Buffalo, knowing that they had their foot on the Canadiens' neck, just continued to push, and push. And the Canadiens had no answer. And they had just enough goaltending. Well, Ellis allowed 3 goals. I mean, their goalie didn't exactly steal the game, but he made timely saves when he had to, especially when the Sabres had the lead late. I mean, key stops on Montreal's goal scorers and during pushbacks prevented momentum swings. That was an important part of the game. Ellis made sure that the Canadiens were kept at bay and allowed his team to maintain the momentum that got them across the finish line. Now, is that going to be the same this Thursday? It remains to be seen. As I've mentioned, their goaltending has been up and down. So if the Canadiens can take advantage of it, they'll be in a better place. But the big picture, when you take a look at Thursday's game last week, Buffalo won because they had their best player on the ice as their best player, that being Tage Thompson. They played faster in transition than Montreal. Of course, Montreal on the half wall, not in the middle of the ice. They finished their chances cleanly, controlled the offensive zone pace, and they got reliable goaltending at key moments to make sure they maintained their lead. Pretty simple stuff when you look at the Sabres, right? Next, we'll take a look at the Sabres' weaknesses and how the Canadiens, not the Sabres' weaknesses, the Canadiens' weaknesses that the Buffalo Sabres exposed. A little different, right? I caught myself in my own changes. It started with inconsistent coverage on elite shooters. Buffalo showed that Montreal still struggles to contain top-end scorers, right? Man to man, the Canadiens, they do well versus the average guy. But when it comes to guys that have size and speed, they still struggle to cover them. They're late on switches, they lose their sticks, and they hesitate in man coverage, allowing prime shooters to find space in the slot and off the rush. That's a thing that the Canadiens have been working on. It doesn't mean that this game tomorrow is going to be like that, but it is something that the Montreal Canadiens need to emphasize because it's somewhere the Buffalo Sabres took full advantage of them. Second is their vulnerability the Canadiens' vulnerability to speed and transition. As I mentioned, the Canadiens got exposed. So the Sabres, they showed how Montreal had difficulty handling north-south teams, right? Because they were just absolutely pushing the Canadiens right up the middle of the ice. And instead of having control in the middle of the ice, the Canadiens were being pushed to the outside. They had slow gap control and mistimed line changes, and that led to a lot of controlled entries for the Sabres, odd man rushes, and defenders backing in instead of standing up when they needed to. Now, granted, again, it wasn't the Canadiens' best game, but at the end of the day, full marks to the Sabres for finding that vulnerability and taking advantage of the Canadiens in transition. Their game was flawless when it came to execution. Perimeter play by the Canadiens, mid-ice control by the Sabres. Simple formula to win hockey games. The Canadiens were also soft in the slot and in front of their own net. Montreal collapsed too low in the zone, opening shooting lanes in the high slot and allowing Buffalo to attack rebounds and get second chance opportunities. Net front boxing out was inconsistent. It's not something that Canadiens normally do. As we mentioned, the Canadiens are more of a fronting team than a team that boxes out. That plays into the Buffalo Sabres' strengths, especially during extended shifts when the Canadiens are looking to block shots as opposed to covering men in their zone. They're too tired. They're stagnant. They're allowing the Sabres to skate around them. Therein lies the problem. The Canadiens have to manage their ice time a hell of a lot better in this game than they did last. Part of that, the long change. Another part of that, the fact that the Canadiens were not playing at home and did not have the matchup advantage that they would normally get by getting last change. Then there was poor momentum management by the Canadiens. After goals against, the Canadiens struggled to stabilize play. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the Canadiens were throwing on their third and fourth line after goals were being scored. It's extremely hard to regain momentum with your third and fourth line when you know that your top two lines just got off the ice, one of them got scored on, and you don't have an answer with the third and fourth line. You know their energy isn't there. So, the Canadiens struggled to stabilize play. Buffalo capitalized quickly on emotional and structural lapses, preventing Montreal from sustaining any type of pressure and flipping momentum back into their own favor. The Sabres just continued to pummel the Canadiens, basically. And even when the Canadiens looked like they were coming back in the hockey game, it didn't take Buffalo long to take advantage of the Canadiens again and turn that momentum back in their favor. And finally, the last weakness that they exposed was the fact that the finish didn't match the chances created. Montreal generated opportunities, but lacked killer instinct. One of the things for sure is, as we mentioned, the Canadiens are a team that likes to pass the puck on the perimeter. Buffalo exposed the Canadiens' inability to consistently convert grade A looks, turning missed chances at one end into goals at the other. The Canadiens had opportunities to score in this hockey game on multiple occasions. But what happened? They tried to get too fancy. So the Sabres took advantage of the fact the Canadiens were indecisive with the puck, didn't take shots on goal, and that played to their advantage. The big takeaway in all of this, when it came to exposing the Canadiens' weaknesses, the Buffalo didn't just win with their talent, right? They targeted Montreal's weakest pressure points: speed, structure, and execution under stress, and they got the best of them. Now that's going to have to change in Thursday night's game. Now we're going to take a look at 5 Sabres that the Canadiens absolutely need to stop. And the first one, the most obvious, is Tage Thompson. He is the biggest offensive threat in the Sabres lineup. Thompson controls play with his size, shot power, and puck possession. Montreal struggled to contain him in prime scoring areas last game. So the key to stopping him, maybe not just one guy, but 2 guys covering him, eliminate inside ice, force pucks to the perimeter. When Tage Thompson can't play between the dots, he's ineffective. So try to get him there. Use one guy to pressure him, another guy to come in and support. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get away from your man-to-man coverage. It just means when Thompson's got the puck, you pay a little bit more attention to him. The second guy you got to watch is Rasmus Dahlin. He's their offensive engine from the back end. Dahlin quarterbacks plays and generates high danger chances. He's a threat on the power play and on rush offense. The key to stopping him, limit time at the point for him. Force him into turnovers and block lanes before shots are released off his stick. Basically, keep the Buffalo Sabres in their own zone as much as possible to limit what Dahlin could do offensively against you. He's not the greatest defensive defenseman. So if you pressure him in his own zone, he's likely to give away the puck, and the Canadiens can take advantage of it. The other guy that we needed to talk about that played very well last game was Josh Doan. Josh Doan, I believe, had a goal and an assist and 2 assists, versus the Canadiens on January 15th. And he brings speed, forechecking pressure, and a scoring upside. He's emerging as one of Buffalo's most reliable attackers this season, and it's something that they desperately needed in support of Tage Thompson. Yes, Alex Tuch was there as a complementary piece to Tage, but you needed more, and they're starting to get it from Josh Doan. The key to stopping him, win puck battles early and minimize clean entries against him. Don't let him skate freely into the zone. Doan likes to take the middle of the ice if you give it to him, so don't. Force him to the perimeter, make him go to the outside, and limit the time and space he has to create any type of offense. Then there's Zach Benson, who famously didn't get called for hooking on the empty net goal. He's a young playmaker, good offensive upside, and he has the ability to create plays. His vision and puck distribution opens up space for his teammates. How to stop him? Force him into low percentage areas and disrupt his timing. How do you do that? By keeping a tight gap and making sure you maintain puck pressure against him. He isn't the most elusive guy on the ice, but he's got good vision. So how do you get a guy to not make passes? You get in his face, you keep a stick in front of him, and you force him to make plays that he doesn't want to make. And finally, Noah Ostlund, emerging as with his playmaking ability. He's the guy that normally sets up Josh Doan for all his goals. Austin shows he's got the ability to generate multi-goal games and create scoring chances at the NHL level. The key to stopping him, again, tight support at the blue line and hit passing lanes. Don't let him have space. It's a pretty simple concept for any of these players. The guys that are playmakers on the Sabres, they create open ice and allow themselves time to look up and see what's in front of them. If the Canadiens get aggressive on the puck carrier and force them to make plays faster than they're comfortable with, more often than not, the Canadiens are going to create turnovers. So just a summary, when you look at these players, the Canadiens need to neutralize Buffalo's elite players and emerging playmakers. From Thompson's scoring to Dahlin's playmaking and complementary threats like Doan, Benson, and Ostlund. If Montreal contains these five, Buffalo's offense is very likely to turn the wrong way and not be able to do anything in this hockey game. It's a tall task, but Montreal's got to be up for it if they expect to win versus the Sabres, and this is a huge game for them after all. We'll get to that in a minute. Next up, 5 Canadiens that need to do more. Now, oftentimes I talk to you about, guys that the Canadiens that have to play well in each game, right? And normally, more often than not, I'll bring up guys like Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Slavkovsky, etc. This time around, I'm not focusing on the guys that we expect to do well. We're focusing on the guys that have struggled of late. And the first guy on that list is Oliver Kapanen. While Kapanen is still generating offensive chances, he hasn't finished of late. In his middle six role, his contributions have been limited offensively because of the fact that he hasn't been able to finish. And he hasn't generated significant chances for his line mates either. So he needs to be better at creating chances with the puck, driving play up ice, and sustaining offensive zone time. He's been prone to lose the puck along the boards lately. He's got to have a little bit more compete. Now, again, it's a compressed season. He's a rookie. He may not be used to the pace or, the compressed schedule. It's understandable. But he's still got to be able to make these modifications, especially now that the Canadiens don't really have any more back-to-backs until after the Olympic break. Then there's Zach Bolduc, whose offense has completely dried up. He was expected to contribute in secondary scoring, but he hasn't really been consistently doing so. And he's leaving a hole in the Canadiens' offense that they were expecting to close up when they acquired him. After all, last season with the Blues, he had 19 goals. So he's got to be better. We know that he's a streaky player, and he scores more on the road than he does at home. But there's no more excuses for Bullzuk. He needs to be better at shot volume. He doesn't take enough of them. He needs to be better at finishing around the net, and he has to be better at threat generation on those third and fourth lines where he normally plays. He's been on the top line. It didn't work. He's been on the second line. It didn't work. Now he's at the bottom of the lineup, and nothing's happening. You can't blame it on his line mates. You've got to lay a little bit of blame on the player. He has to step it up. Then there's Joe Veleno. While there's no denying that Joe Veleno has been a key piece to the Canadiens' penalty-killing team, he hasn't really put the puck in the net, right? He's got 1 goal on the season so far. And so Veleno's two-way game hasn't translated to any noticeable possession gains or scoring production, right? It makes his shifts blend into the background and seem nothing special, right? He's got to get better at driving possession. He has the skill to do it. He's just not confident enough to do it. He's got to be better at winning puck battles, and he's got to start contributing on special teams a little bit more, especially on the penalty kill. If there's one thing that this guy can do that he hasn't done yet, it's pop one shorthanded. He's due for one. And I'm sure with one of those, his confidence may very well boost up, and that'll create even better opportunities, down the road. And there's Mike Matheson. Now you're going to tell me, well, Mike Matheson has been playing well, and he has. He's offensively capable. But if anything, the Canadiens' blue line has been inconsistent at times, right? Some of it's been him. Some of it's been Jack-Eye. Some of it's been Struble. But he hasn't clearly tilted games with his veteran presence like he was expected to, right, when the Canadiens re-signed him. In order to be better, he's got to be better at his gap control, defending in transition, which is where he normally gives up the puck, and he has to be better as a breakout catalyst. He's normally very good, but if there's one thing I've noticed in Mike Matheson's game of late that hasn't really translated is the fact that he's not moving his feet to skate the puck out of his own zone. He's relying on making passes up to the forwards. Now, that could very well be a structural thing with the Canadiens, right? But if we know anything about the success that Mike Matheson has when he plays, he's got to use his legs. His legs are his biggest weapon. It's not his slap shot. It's not his wrist shot. It's the fact that he skates like the wind. Paul Coffey wasn't the greatest shooter. He played with a short stick. But man, could the boy fly. Matheson's that type of defenseman. He's got slick skating skills, very smooth. He's got to take advantage of that if he wants to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Reliable when it comes to transition offense and creating offense in the offensive zone. And then finally, there's Phil Deneau. Now, I know Deneau got his first goal of the season last game, and we're all happy for him. But it's got to continue, right? His experience and his defensive structure are fantastic. And he's shown in recent games that he's got the ability to start creating offense, especially for his line mates. He's got to continue that trend. And so he's got to continue his face-off dominance. That translates into possession time for his line, playmaking opportunities, and an impact at 5-on-5 even strength. So in the context of what we're talking about, this list isn't about outright failure, right? It's about an underwhelming impact relative to their roles. The guys need to step up. Even if a few players elevate their game, scoring more, driving possession, and winning battles and making strong plays without the puck, Montreal's depth and consistency will improve noticeably. And that's what we've been calling for, right? Secondary scoring. Now, the Canadiens got a bit of it the other day. Let's see a little bit more of it with what we pointed out here. Finally, our last point is 5 ways to beat the Buffalo Sabres. Not keys to victory, but 5 ways you can take advantage of them. Number 1, shut down Buffalo's weapons early. Lean heavily on Tage Thompson, who scored those 3 goals and got 2 assists in the last matchup. Stopping him, especially early in the hockey game and in the slot, will disrupt Buffalo's top scoring threats on every line. How do you do that? You stay tight in defensive coverage around the net, and you force Thompson to the perimeter and chase him with support. So one guy on the puck carrier and another guy in proximity to make sure you cut off passing lanes. That'll take away what Thompson can do. The Canadiens also need to stay disciplined and limit defensive breakdowns. In that game, they exchanged leads through 2 periods and couldn't keep Buffalo from tagging them on the 3rd period go-ahead goal. The focus points here: avoid giving up odd man rushes, make sure you keep control of the middle of the ice, and make clean low-risk plays in your own zone. Don't look for long passes. Don't look to go east-west in your own zone. Move the puck up ice with short passes from your own zone to the blue line, then stretch the play a little bit more in the neutral zone so that you can create that separation with the Buffalo's D. Win the special teams battle. While both teams scored at even strength, power plays were important. Montreal got goals from Caulfield and Suzuki and with help from Lane Hudson. That's got to continue for Montreal to have success. So, 1, they got to stay out of the penalty box, and 2, they got to use the power play to generate momentum with quick passes, traffic in front of the goaltender, and shot volume. In recent games, especially that game versus the Sabres, the power play was a little bit of a, well, I wouldn't say that game against the Sabres, but in other games that they've played recently, the Canadiens' power play has been a little bit of a momentum killer because they've kept the puck on the perimeter and they haven't been able to shoot the puck through any type of traffic. Now, in the last game they played this past Tuesday, they had a lot of success getting traffic in front and making sure they took the goaltender's eyes away. That's how the Canadiens scored their goals. That's how they managed to win it 4-3 in overtime. So, be it what it is, the Canadiens need to make sure they use that power play more effectively, because if they don't, it's going to be a difficult game to win versus the Sabres. They've got to get strong goaltending from the start. Sam Montembeault, he's played well. And so if he does get the start tomorrow, which I expect he will, he's got to be solid. One of the things he's got to do, especially against bigger players that get in front of the net and create net front presence, is that he needs to play at the top of his crease. He can't be back in his net looking to look around the screen from there. If he's up close and personal with the players that are trying to screen him, he's going to have more success. The other thing, too, is he's got to rely on his defensemen to box players out. Buffalo's offense, they created high danger chances last game versus the Canadiens, and they benefited from timely goals. They also got goals from in tight, where they really they just took advantage of goals from in tight, from the top of the crease, from the high slot, even from the goal line, the goal that Josh Doan scored. There's got to be a way for the Canadiens to mitigate that. So strong goaltending is key. So the goaltenders need to challenge shots and be ready for the Buffalo's pace, movement in tight, and their rebounding ability. Like good basketball teams, a good basketball team that can rebound will score more points. That's what Buffalo relies on. Creating shot opportunities, coming in, looking for second chances off of rebounds. The Canadiens need to make sure they mitigate that. And finally, the Canadiens need to bring a little bit more of a physical edge, which lacked from the last game versus the Sabres, right? Buffalo tends to control play when they gain offensive zone possession and hold pucks. How do they hold pucks? They keep them along the boards, and they force Montreal to be physical. Montreal isn't overly physical, but they do have pieces. Montreal's got to learn to win puck battles, get sticks and skates, poke the puck free, clear the zone effectively, and push pucks up the ice quickly to create transition scoring, which lacked in the last game. What that looks like, obviously, it's clean board play, right? And part of that is going to be Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach's physicality along the boards is going to go a long way to creating opportunities for Caulfield and Suzuki. So along the boards, the play's got to be clean, and the Canadiens need to take possession of the puck. Quick outlet passes. Don't overthink it. You've got an outlet, use it. And then support from forwards on breakouts to avoid turnovers. Don't look for long stretch passes. Have somebody in proximity, 3-4 feet away, that you can give the puck up to if that long stretch pass isn't available. This way you've got them there in support, and you can continue to move the puck up the ice effectively. So Montreal's key for redemption revolves around neutralizing top-scoring threats like Thompson, disciplined defense, winning the special teams battle, solid goaltending, and quick physical transitions out of their own zone. It's pretty simple when you think about it. Now, One thing that I want to get to before we end this show is how important this game is. Tonight, the Detroit Red Wings won in overtime versus the Toronto Maple Leafs by a score of 2-1. It was a good hockey game. But again, Detroit, 2 points, pulling another 2 points ahead of the Montreal Canadiens. The Sabres are 4 points behind Montreal. The division is extremely tight. If my memory serves, I think the Leafs are 5 points behind the Detroit Red Wings, which would put them maybe a point behind the Buffalo Sabres. So everything is tight. In fact, there was a graphic on the game tonight that showed that most of the teams in the NHL that are winning right now are in the Atlantic Division. While that doesn't bode well for the rest of the league, it makes our division look great, but it also keeps everything tight. Somebody out there said, and I don't know who it was because I just saw it flash across my screen, that 96 points will guarantee you a playoff spot. The Canadiens are over 60 right now. They've got 35 points to go to reach that magic 96 mark. That's 17 wins, right? They still have about 30 games left. It's feasible that it can be done. It's also feasible that it can't. So this is playoff time for Montreal, as I mentioned before. They've got to win hockey games. Doesn't matter who the opponent is, whether they come from the Atlantic, Metropolitan, or the Western Conference. They can ill afford to let any point slip through their fingers right now, especially when they play against division rivals. They're playing against Buffalo tonight. They're playing in Boston Saturday. Each of those 4-point games, each of them just as important. It starts tomorrow against Buffalo. The Canadiens can't take the game for granted. They got to put their best foot forward, and they got to win versus the Sabres in Montreal. Also, don't forget that coming this Friday at 8 p.m., another edition of Puck Talk Live. Love the show. Love the fact that I get to go back and forth with the fans. We'll look at the topics around the league again. We'll look at the topics when it comes to officiating, because I don't know if you guys heard about the penalty that one of the assistant coaches on Tampa Bay took the other day. It wasn't quite as bad as the Lane Hudson penalty, but it was a bad penalty. The puck was shot into the Tampa bench, and the assistant coach put his hand up to try to catch the puck to avoid it bouncing off the glass and hitting somebody. He got called for delay of game because they said he tried to keep the puck from going over the glass. Oh my God. You can't even jump that high. Seriously? The officiating in the league is a thing we need to discuss. It's getting ridiculous. So we'll take a look at it on Friday, along with other subjects. If there's anything that you want to talk about, throw it in the comments. I'll put something together for you and we can discuss it on Friday. But until then, we talk tomorrow night after the game versus the Buffalo Sabres. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to tell people about the show and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow night.